Welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Kirk Prine again, and we've been talking about mindset is in your whole body, consciousness is in your whole body, your body stories are in your whole body, not just in your brain. And each time giving you a little bit of a nugget, and especially for those of you who are on a healing journey, but those of you who are healers, and even more especially those of you who might come to our body story experience training to prep you to be a life coach. Part of what you need to know, and part of what I love is I know the work works because it's worked on me. And it's out of that, if you can, as a healer, know that something works because it's worked for you, then there's a strong conviction, there's confidence in holding a space to facilitate somebody else to move into that space as he or she chooses to. I'm going to talk about a kind of a darker sounding healing nugget today, but I think it's juicy and ripe with potential. But I'm going to start with I have here, we use a lot of imagery in our work, and Quan Yin, I love the image of her. You often see her. She has a willow tree twig. With the willow tree catching the dew and in the raindrops, but also being able to bend and be flexible. But she's always carrying this little vial or vase. In some of the stories, they talk about that she is the goddess of compassion. She's the Bodhisattva, of compassion, and she's holding in that vial, in that vase, the tears and suffering of the people. So collecting those, taking refuge in the Buddha. So as we talk about the topic of depression today, I want to, in healing depression, want to just remind us we come from, in all of our work, come from a place of compassion, come from a place of opening our hearts to find the treasures that are sometimes hidden and buried in such odd places like depression. In the work that we do, and we're going to teach you in our body story work, we have kind of these 4 conditions of people who are feeling stuck, but it's also people who are feeling depressed. And the conditions are someone's feeling powerless, or they're feeling unsafe, they're feeling alone, they feel hopeless. And those conditions hold a space for depression to lock in. So if in our current world, it's really easy any given day to somehow feel disempowered, to feel hopeless, to feel somewhat alone, or even to feel unsafe. So there's probably kind of a general malaise of depression that has been around for a while in the current times in which we're living. And so depression, whether it's severe depression, or whether it's chronic depression, or whether it's kind of that malaise of that's in the air, in the energetics around us, we're all picking it up and having tools to lift ourselves up and move through it, and even to find the treasures in it, is what we call body story work. So I'm going to get very personal for a moment and tell some of my story. When I was in grad school, I was a star student, so I, was aced everything until I got to statistics. And I took a statistics class, and I failed. and you know, I had never failed anything, so it was just like, oh my God. But one of the things that I remember were some of the concepts in statistics that are pertinent to our topic of depression, and that is just, we talked about a multifactorial analysis. And when it comes to depression, so many people want to simplify it, that it has this origin, it has this origin. You know, it probably for different people has different origins, has different compositions. But what you can always know is with depression, there are stories, body stories that are held in the body. So here I am. I'm in grad school. I flunked this class. You know, disheartening, but you know, not the end of the world. And I'm doing my my doctoral work, and I have been working for almost 2 years. I'm developing a study and actually a test measurement for a study, and my committee chairs, two of the people on my committee, really I felt betrayed by in following me in my research. And so I was really wounded by that. And of course, at the same time, I was having a powerful lover, intimate relationship with someone who brought up in the nature of our interactions some of my old abuse that had been squelched down. So here I am in grad school, kind of all those pressures going on, and I, for probably the first time in my life, really felt severely depressed. In fact, for a very brief little time, I felt even suicidal. And I didn't know how to get out of it. But I had all kinds of supports, and all the work that we talk about as body story life coaches, you know, I accessed rather rapidly to assist myself through that really shadowy time. But the nuggets of what came forth were in the depression for me, were many of these things were surfacing through the circumstances that were going on both in current time for me in grad school, and dredging up all this past experience of my abuse that had not been fully dealt with yet. And so oftentimes I think I was feeling not only unsafe and alone and hopeless, but more often I think I was feeling powerless. So as you think about your own malaise of depression, or if you have bouts of depression, or if you're working with clients who have depression, you know, how might you facilitate some of that getting free? So for me, it took some actions, but I want to get to kind of some methodology that we use in our body story work rather quickly. So you can't do breath work. You can't do breath work. You can't move. Whatever, you know, just you shake things. You can't breath, movement, sound, you know, a voice and bold voice and clearing. All of those things have a vibration to them. When you're depressed, what do you feel like? You want to pull the covers over your head. You want to sleep all day. You want to hide out. You don't want to be seen and heard, and you don't want to interact with others in your world. And so breath, movement, and sound, no matter whether you're the person who's feeling depressed or whether you're the clinician who's actually helping someone, can help somebody very rapidly get a little bit of space from the depression and give them a little bit more energy so that they might do the work they needed to do. for me, the retrieval, the reclaiming was actually getting to the body story. And as I did some of my abuse work with my therapist at the time, I came up with the fact that, one definition for depression, of course, in the past has always been internalized anger. So anger that's been turned inward, as well as learned helplessness. And I would think I was experiencing both of those things at the time. So my therapist was really good about, as my abuse stuff came up, to really give me a vehicle to feel my rage in a safe space. And in doing that, I was breathing more fully. I was voicing some of the stuff that I needed to get out of the system of my body. And I was also beginning to name more clearly some of the things that I was experiencing. I've talked in other videos about how my lungs used to get chronic bronchitis regularly, and all the way through up until this started happening in grad school, that was happening for me. When I realized that my lungs had a story in them, and that story had to do with my right to be on the planet, my right to live in this body, my right to exist. When I really got that, it helped me break the contract that I had with my father and my family, and the circumstances in which that pain had gotten locked into my body. And the healing took place that, my lungs, again, I, like everybody, get something from time to time, but never have chronic bronchitis like I did as a kid. So just knowing that breath, movement, sound, but getting to the story. And for me, one of the stories was my right to exist here and be at home in this body. And with that, I started gathering some power. I worked with another therapist who, at the time, she was helping me with some of the abuse stuff that again got emerged through just some of my love relationship that was happening, and how it stirred all of this stuff and triggered it for me. And she had me kind of be like beloved Humphrey here. She had me be like a little boy who was the boy who got abused. And what she had me do was, she had me throwing off my abuser's arm. So I would push it away and push it away. And in doing that, something very powerful happened. But at first, I couldn't do it. All I would do is I'd break into tears. My heart would break open, because I was getting deeply in touch with how powerless and how unsafe I felt. And the more I was able to do that action, the more I was able to free myself and say, I am powerful, and I'm not taking this, and I do have a right to exist in my body. So we use a lot of props like Humphrey to help us in doing some of our more intense work at times, and you may want to do that as well, so that you have not only the experience of letting go and taking your power back, but a new experience of being held, of being cared for, of being affirmed and feeling powerful. So I did that work with a therapist. I fired my my committee people who I felt had just totally misread all the work that I had done, and I broke up with the lover, saying, this is not a fit anymore with me. All of those three actions were my behaviors that got shifted as I came into, I have a right to exist. I have a right to feel safe in this body. I have a right to live and breathe fully in this body and be at home in this body. So depression has many different layers and many different stories for lots of folks. For you, if you're depressed, or the clients that you're working with, you know, beginning to get to those stories through the body so that there's a new wiring that happened. I've just been learning a new word that I'll leave you with in closing for today's nugget, and that's kind of neuroplasty. So as we've talked about with Candace Pert's work around how there are neuropathways throughout our bodies, and those stories, those body stories, kind of are lines and pathways to activating those things. And when you feel grief or shame or guilt or depression, which may be a malaise of all of those things together, then you're clogging up the system. And neuroplasty simply is about the fact that you're beginning to clear that out and have a new harmony between your right brain and your left brain so that you have more ease in your body. I think when I did my work and I claimed that I am a powerful man and that I have a right to be on this planet, I not only changed the story, but I kind of changed some of my brain waves so that there was a fuller kind of intuition and availability to be the healer than I am. So all kinds of things happen when we're willing to face our fears and, you know, pull the covers off the head and go, okay, breathe, move, and in that breath, that movement, and in that voice of claiming who you are, you find more of yourself, and in that you find more joy. So what I can tell you is this journey, which I seldom talk about because it's so much not a part of who I am in the world these days, but it is a part of the history that, just like the Quan Yin, I can have empathy for someone and compassion for someone, no matter what their circumstances, because I've been in some of those feelings myself. So healers, remember who you are and know that there is liberation, and it's through the body. Namaste.